Akina Cox, and you're watching Cheap Eats, the show where you learn how to cook with minimal effort and minimal cash. Today's guest is Akina Cox, who I'm married to. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What are we going to be cooking today?
Today we're going to make band practice pasta.
Why is it called band practice pasta?
Well, that's because sometimes I come home and it turns out you had just left to go have dinner with your buddies before band practice. And so I come home to an empty house and then this is what I make for myself.
Oh, shoot. What time is it? I'm late for band practice.
So today we're making band practice pasta, which is a bastardized version of Gourmet magazine's spaghetti carbonara. And it's supposed to be really, really fancy the way they make it, but I make a easier way to do it. So what you gotta do is, first of all, I just pulled out about 4 slices of bacon and I'm just cutting it up with kitchen scissors. Oh, that looks so gross. You might want to separate it with your fingers. And then you want to take your water and start heating up the spaghetti water. Okay, so while that is cooking, you might want to put a little bit of salt in there. I always forget, and then Andrew gets mad that my food never has enough salt in it. But for a night when I'm making this, he's not here, so he wouldn't know. Then turn on the stove. Get the bacon starting to, I think it says render the fat, so you just want to like speed it up a little bit. And then you want to quickly start chopping some onions. Of course your hands are all slippery from the bacon, so whatever. So I think you just chop 1 onion. Yeah. The recipe says finely chopped, which makes sense because otherwise it takes a long time to cook, but I usually don't do that. And I'm not sure if you can hear the sizzle of the bacon, so that means that it's just starting to cook. So we can stir this around a little. And the fat is like starting to come off the bacon and make the pan kind of oily, which is good because this is a cast iron pan. And you need a lot of oil so that when you're cooking with it, so that the food doesn't stick to the bottom. Okay, so now's a good time to add in all the onion. And this is a really important part, especially if you're lazy like me and you don't want to cut all the onion very fine. You need to make sure it cooks enough. The recipe says to just let it cook for a minute or a few minutes, but you really gotta make sure the onion is pretty fully cooked because otherwise you're gonna be eating this dish with like raw onions and that's kind of gross. It looks like these onions are not really fully coming apart, so I'm gonna just chop them up. So you have to grate a lot of Parmesan cheese for this. This calls for like a whole cup of cheese. The recipe calls for 3/4 cup of Parmesan and 1/3 cup of Pecorino Romano. but I usually just use whatever hard cheese is in my kitchen. Well, it looks about a cup, probably a little bit more. Then you actually need to take the cheese, and it says to whisk it in a small bowl with some other ingredients. Check your onions. Looks like they're just starting to get softened. So don't be afraid to have the heat on and just like really make sure that they are cooking nicely. Now you take, oh wait, we should also check on the water, which is getting hot. You mix your egg in. Then you mix a little bit of salt. It calls for just a 1/4 teaspoon, and you have so much cheese in there, you don't really need any more. And a little bit of pepper. So while this is still cooking, you can see the onions are getting a little bit more yellowy, and some of them are almost translucent now. You can check on your, ooh, the spaghetti water's boiling, so we're going to put in a bunch of spaghetti. I'll probably use about half of this. I think it's about 1/3 of a box, because I already took a handful out before, or maybe half a box. So I read somewhere that you don't actually need to use that much water for spaghetti, so I don't, but feel free to use more than this. So it takes about a minute, and then it especially for something like this where we don't use that much, we don't really have a sauce, you can use just a little water for your spaghetti and then reserve the water and kind of just use it to make the sauce. Okay, so we're going to just let that go. The onions are getting to be done. So now it says to add half a cup of white wine, of dry white wine. I just threw out our white wine the other day, so we don't have any around here. But usually it's really great to use up any like any bottle of wine you have lying around. I have some chicken stock lying on hand, so I'm going to just use that. I think almost any liquid would do. I feel like I've used beer at one point too for this. But you just need a little bit of liquid, just about a half cup. So these jars are 2 cups, so I just want like maybe that much. That's probably a little too much, but it's fine. So you just want that liquid to get in there. And then it's good to have it boil off so about half the liquid remains. Whew, almost lost that. Then we can just stir our spaghetti, which already almost seems cooked. Not quite. But you don't want to cook it too much. I'm going to turn it way down because already a lot of the liquid has evaporated. And while that's going on, I'm going to throw out my onion peels. So when dinner is ready, I'm not staring at a bunch of things in my kitchen. A bunch of trash. So I'm going to check on my spaghetti. Perfect. You can always leave a little bit of the water behind. Just a tiny bit. So now we have our mostly drained spaghetti. And we just pour it in to the onions and bacon. Now you're supposed to kind of toss this around while the onions are still cooking. Get that kind of coated in there. And then you turn off the heat. And then you add in the eggs and the cheese. You stir that in, and although the heat is off, it will kind of make the cheese really melty and cook the eggs a tiny bit. If you're deathly afraid of salmonella, this is not the recipe for you. But just know that, I think is it like 1 out of every 1,000,000 eggs might have salmonella, but it won't really affect you. Anyway, don't worry about it. So this is basically what it looks like. And it's extremely delicious. Just remember, after you eat this, you have to watch something with either Molly Ringwald or Julia Roberts in it. That's the only rule. This is really good. After you're done making your pasta, you can work on your cross-stitch project.